And good Wednesday afternoon. My name is Ryan Belmore, and this is our Rent and Mortgage Relief virtual panel discussion. Joining me as co-host, I'm actually going to be producer in charge today, Frank. You're going to be host in charge.
Oh, do I get it? Well, I have a hat, so I'm okay.
You get a hat. And our co-host of today's event is Senator Dawn Euer, who represents Newport and Jamestown. And good afternoon, Senator.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me, and thanks for hosting this and producing it.
Of course. I'm going to step aside now and let you guys take over.
Yeah, well, I'll just, to start real quickly, that I can't think of a more important topic than the one we're going to talk about today, particularly in light of what's happened with the Supreme Court. In light of if my numbers are correct, Dawn, what I heard this morning, that of the $200 million available for rent relief in Rhode Island, only about 4% of that money has been used. And nationally, the figure is $46.5 billion, and about $5.1 billion has been used. So a real need for us to be able to talk about this program and for people to understand what's available and how they can access it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think, when I first came up, the funds have been available for rent relief for quite a while now. And I think that when the idea of this program came up and I approached our panelists for today, I approached Ryan, we talk about housing a lot. And, the original idea for this was really just to kind of get the word out, to let people know that these funds are available, accessible, to offer as a resource, my office to help, get access to these funds, but also to bring some experts on who can really talk about what these programs are and how people can access these funds, because it's critically important, especially in light of, as you mentioned, the Supreme Court ruling. So there is no longer an eviction moratorium. Evictions are moving forward. And so folks really need to take advantage of these funds that are available. And so, so we do have a couple panelists who are going to enlighten us about some of the parameters of what these programs are, and and how folks can access them. So I want to introduce our first panelist today, and this is Ms. Christine Hunsinger. She's the Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer with Rhode Island Housing. And so, Christine, welcome. Welcome to the panel. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us. It's so important that we get the word out. So thank you so much.
And I believe that you have a presentation that I think Ryan is going to pull up for us, and I will turn it over to you to go ahead with that introduction.
Great. So Rent Relief RI is the name of the program, and you can access that at rentreliefri.com on the web. So I'm going to say that over and over and over again until it sticks in everyone's head. So Rent Relief RI. And if we go to the first slide, it's a program that's given Rhode Island $352 million in federal assistance, and that money can be used to pay rent arrearages and forward-facing rent, utility arrearages. Sometimes we can do utilities going forward. We can do security deposits. We do an internet stipends, really housing-related expenses. And that funding is available until September 30th of next year. And today, as I left the office this morning, we had helped over 2,400 families and put out $18.07 million. So over $18 million out the door today. Next slide. So here's the things that you need to know if you're applying, or if you're helping someone apply, or if you want to know whether or not this program can help you. Income, COVID impact, and risk of housing instability or homelessness. And I'm going to tell you how each one of those work on the next slide. We talk about income. So in the housing world, we talk about 80% of area median income and below. It says on this slide that it translates to 69.2, but on Aquidneck Island, for a family of 4, it's about $79,900. So and the application figures it out for you as soon as you type in what your income is, whether or not you're at 80% of area median income or below. So next slide. And so the COVID impact. This program was designed to help people who were financially harmed by the pandemic. And so in order to demonstrate that, You have to have lost a job. You have to have lost income, had a reduction in that income. So you could have lost a second job or worked fewer hours, or you could have incurred significant cost due to COVID. So if you had to leave your job and were staying home because your kids were homeschooling, or if you had to hire additional help to watch your kids because your kids were homeschooling, that's a significant cost incurred during COVID. And that, we encourage everybody to think about significant cost, medical expenses due to COVID, increased utility usage, which is, costs more money and due to COVID. So those kinds of things fall into that bucket. So you need to have suffered a financial hardship due to COVID or during the pandemic. So, and the next one is to be a risk of housing instability. This one's pretty easy to prove. You're either behind on your rent, behind on your utility bill, you've got a 5-day demand letter or some other kind of letter from your landlord, or an eviction notice, or even if you're not behind, but you've had that hardship due to COVID, you may have spent your savings, or you may be struggling to get back on your feet and get your hours to back where they were. And so you can fill out a self-attestation and tell us that you're struggling to make your rent payments going forward. So you don't need to be behind on your rent in order to qualify. But so it's an income qualifier, a hardship due to COVID, and then this risk of housing instability. And that's how you qualify for this program. Next slide. Again, so it can be used for utilities, rent, if your lease includes that you pay for trash or water or any of those costs, we count that as rent and you can do it. It's eligible for assistance. We're also providing every applicant that's approved with a $50 per month internet stipend, and that's to defray the cost of your current internet bill, or if you don't have it, to help you access it. And applicants can receive up to 18 months of assistance. So, it's a good program, and it's designed to help people get back on their feet from after suffering all these hardships during the pandemic. Next slide. Okay, rentreliefri.com, www.rentreliefri.com. All the information is there. We've got FAQs, we've got, how you qualify, a list of documents that you might need when you apply. We've got a list of partners who will help you. We've got 10 partners throughout the state, and there are numerous other organizations who are training to help folks. You can sit with these folks in person. If technology is not your thing, they'll help you fill out the application and upload documents. If you are homebound or aren't going out because of the pandemic, you can mail your documents to them and they'll help you over the phone or over Zoom. So there's a number of different ways to receive assistance from these partners, and there's a list of them on the website. We've got language assistance through the call center and these partners. So Portuguese, Spanish, and English are all available at the call center with the click of a button, push of a button, and up to 170 other languages. It just takes a little bit of time. We connect you with a service. So we're really trying to make sure that everyone can access this program and do so in a way that makes sense for them. Next slide. Here's what you'll need. We need to know who you are. So if you've got an ID that tells me that you live in Rhode Island, that's one of those things that we ask for. If you don't have one, call the call center, fill out an application anyway, tell us why you don't have one. We can waive almost any piece of documentation if we have to. We ask for proof of income. So if you were receiving unemployment, you can send us your statement from them. If you're working, you can send us pay stubs. If you have a SNAP letter or a WIC letter or some kind of certification for a DHS program that you were deemed eligible for after January 1st, 2021, then we'll take that and categorically use that to qualify you for income. So there's a number of different ways to demonstrate that you're income qualified for this program. We really try to start with what documentation you have easily accessible and use that. If you've got a note from the court, we want you to upload that. We want to know if you've got a hearing scheduled for an eviction, because we want to, that's one of the prioritization criteria we use. So we try to get to those folks, stop those evictions. So if you got one of those, make sure you upload it. We need to know that you're a renter. We need to know that you live where you say you do. So we like a lease, but if you don't have one, anything that shows me that you live there, so canceled checks to your landlord that you paid your rent, or a letter from your landlord saying that you live there, snapshots of your bank statement where you're able to show that you were paying rent. So really anything that shows me that you are, that have a pattern of tenancy, is another piece of the application that we ask you to demonstrate. If you don't have some of these things or all of these things, you should still apply. We use a self-attestation. There's a form that you can fill out where you attest, you fill out your income and what you owe and all those kinds of things, and then you attest that it's true. And we can use that document to deem you eligible for the program. So don't let the documentation scare you. We want everybody to come in and apply, and we'll work with everybody to make sure that they can complete the application. Got a call center. It's open 8:30 to 5:30 Monday through Friday, and 8:30 to 1 on Saturdays. So if you're working during the week and you can't get it done then, you can always call on Saturday. That number's right here, 1-855-608-8756, and they're there to help. If you need to check your status on your application, you can call them, or you can log back in and it'll show you right there in the application. So those are the documents that that we'll ask you for as part of the application process, but don't be scared off if you don't have one. Next slide. The landlord, we like the landlord to participate, right? So we would love for the landlord to agree to participate in this program with the tenant. And we do that because it provides the tenant protection in that they agree to allow you to stay in the apartment for as long as you're eligible for assistance. And there's some protection for the landlord because we pay the landlord directly. And so he or she is guaranteed that those funds will go to them to cover the rent. Landlord needs a W-9 form signed that asks for their EIN or SSN, so it's not separate that we need that. Ask them to confirm what the tenant has said that they owe as past due rent, and then proof that they own the property. And if they can't and provide that easily, we can do it for them through the tax assessor's database. So we just take a screenshot showing that they do in fact own the property, and they're done. I will say one of the important things to remember when you're filling out this application is that it's email driven. So you need to have an email address and your landlord needs to have an email address, and you need to know both of them. If you put a fake email in there, then we won't be able to connect with the landlord or with the tenant, depending on who's filling out the application. So try to obtain the email address of your tenant or your landlord when you're applying. Next slide. Oh, and I just wanted to make sure, Senator Euer, that you know that there's a mortgage assistance program coming. So the rent relief RI is for tenants only, renters only. But in September, we anticipate launching a program that is for mortgage holders. So there'll be assistance for them too. And I think that's the general overview of the program. So I'm happy to, expound on anything or answer any questions or be helpful in any way I can.
Thank you, Christine. Frank, did you have anything right now, or do we want to go to the other panelists?
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions off of that. When we're talking about area median income, and on Aquidneck Island of 79.9, which is higher than most of the state, I would guess, but it's one of the downfalls of Aquidneck Island, and we have all of those high priced housing, the mansions and what have being factored in, which is a real detriment to people who are on a lower level.
So that's the ceiling, though. That's the ceiling for 80% of area median income. If you make 79.9 as a family of 4 or below,
okay,
then you're eligible for the program. So anybody below that as a family of 4.
And my only other question right now would be this program coming up for homeowners. Do we know how much money is going to be set aside for that?
Yeah, the federal government set aside $50 million for the state of Rhode Island to help mortgage holders that were impacted due to COVID.
Great. Dawn, that's what I have for now.
That's great. Thanks, Frank. Thank you, Christine. And I anticipate we'll have maybe some viewer questions after we get to the rest of our panelists. And so with that, I do want to introduce our next panelist, which is Angela Downing. She is the Director of Social Services at East Bay Community Action Program. Angela has a Master's of Social Work from Rhode Island College. And in addition, she has over 20 years of experience with social service agencies. She's responsible for the promotion of interagency cooperation and coordination of family development services at UPCAP and within 2 family centers in Riverside and Newport. These services include basic human needs through Safety Net Department and 3 food pantries, Victims of Crime, the HUS program, LIHEAP, housing programs, and Rhode Island Works. So we invited the East Bay Community Action Program because while Rhode Island Housing does provide the overview of these programs and services and serves as the administrator of these funds, they have important relationships with community partners like UPCAP, who helps on the ground, who has relationships with community members, community organizations, really can help folks get access to this program, help them with the applications. And so I don't want to steal your thunder, Angela, but if you want to talk a little bit about the work that you do, it relates to this program, and I'm sure we will have questions as well.
Thank you. Well, what I first would like to say is that we provide the services, like you said, at both our 100 Bullocks Point in East Providence and 19 Broadway in Newport. If a client needs to be on site and have an appointment, they can call the main number and go through the prompts to get the extension, which is 1152, I believe, to leave their information. And we like to call back because we want to make sure when we're scheduling an appointment that they have everything that they need. So a lot of times clients will show up for an appointment or call and not have all the documents that they need to proceed with the application process. So since we started at the end of June, we've received over 200 calls. Not all the clients need to come in. A lot of them just want more information or feel comfortable asking us some additional questions based on the information that the rent relief promotion has been done. There's commercials and things on the buses, so it's really out there. So a lot of times we're just getting questions, follow-up questions. So clients can come on site and work with the family advocate. We're scheduling at Bullocks Point on Mondays and Thursdays on-site appointments, and on Wednesday and Friday at 19 Broadway. And for the most part, we're able to help people virtually and assist them with the uploading of documents and answer their questions and get the application complete. But like you said, there are some people who have that anxiety and want to just to make sure that they're doing everything correctly and want that assistance. And that averages anywhere from 5 to 10 people a week at either site. And we have also the availability to provide translation on site or on the phone also. So I feel that clients are getting their questions asked. Most of the questions too are about the COVID identification or providing identification to be eligible for that. And more explanation about our role. Like, so once they complete the application with us, we let them know that it's going to Rhode Island Housing and that they'll be assigned a case manager after that through Rhode Island Housing to help them continue with the process. So that sometimes information isn't clear because there are so many partners that are helping with this process to get the applications done. A lot of times the clients don't know that there's an additional work or a case manager that they have to work with. So I just would like to make that very clear that it's the completion of the application, getting the documents that you need, helping you get that uploaded and get that application completed to Rhode Island Housing that we want to help. And also at that time, I want to say being a CAP, we also ask them if they want to be assessed for additional services. We have health center, you know, COVID vaccines, food pantries, other services. So if they want to, we also will do a deeper assessment and make sure that they're connected to all the services that we offer at that time. And I want to say maybe about 5 to 10% might want more additional services, are anxious about the wait and might be eligible for other funding or other things that we provide as a CAP agency. And also I just want to add, as a partnering with Rhode Island Housing, doing the applications, their response to our questions and helping us get applications through has been wonderful. So I just do want to thank them for being such great partners. So, I mean, we have one of my advocates, Cindy, that will be on, and she can give you a little more in-depth experience about working more directly with the clients. Like I said, it's more the organizational reach I have, making sure that we have advocates at every site and the advocates have all the technology and resources available to be able to complete the applications and make further connections for clients.
That's really great. Thank you so much, Angela. And I think that's important to have a resource for folks who may not be comfortable with, filling out the online application themselves, to be able to have a trusted community partner like EdCap, and also to have office hours Wednesday and Friday in Newport is incredibly important. That's an easy downtown walking location for a lot of folks. Was there a phone number or that you wanted to share with everybody about how they could contact to reach out to set up an appointment?
So there are two. I'm going to let Cindy provide that to make sure it's accurate, because I have several numbers that I so when she comes on, I'll have her provide that.
Okay, great. Frank, did you have anything?
Just an overall question. How many people do we think actually need services that we're not reaching?
I think I don't think that we're not reaching the people. I feel that it's the criteria to access the funds that might be murky. So there are people struggling to pay their rent, and it's the COVID identification to show what caused that. So there is a housing need in Rhode Island in general, and there are a lot of underpaid, low income workers, and it's getting the clarification that there needs to be the COVID issue in conjunction with applying for this that might be the issue. But I think that everybody is being reached. I feel that all the community partners that we work with here locally, and because we have the whole 10 catchment areas from East Providence to Newport, I think that it's very well communicated, and I think it's just criteria that might be the issue.
So I guess my question was not so much about that as it was about total numbers. How many people, you mentioned that you got about 200 phone calls since the end of June. How many people are out there who are in need of the services, or for one reason or another have not contacted you, and maybe but there's been outreach enough for them to know about it, but for some reason there's a reluctance to connect. I'm just looking for get maybe a handle on how large a problem we're talking about.
If they're not contacting us, I wouldn't have that data. I feel it's the same maybe issue as we have with the COVID vaccines. We have the outreach, we're out there, and if people aren't accessing, I would have to have data about people who are at risk for eviction, like how many people have eviction appointments or have gotten 5-day demand letters, and I don't have that for my region. I just know who've accessed us. So anybody who's accessed us, we were able to provide them the information. So I don't think I can really honestly give you the data for that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Angela. I really appreciate you providing that overview and for all the work that you're doing. And so I want to invite our next panelist to join us. And so we have Cindy Nemet. And Cindy, I apologize if I mispronounced your name.
Oh, close enough.
Okay. So Cindy is the safety net family advocate at the East Bay Community Action Program. Cindy received a bachelor's degree in sociology from Portland State University. She has over 30 years experience as an advocate for individuals and families, and she's been employed for 5 years as the safety net family advocate at the East Bay Community Action Program. So Cindy, thank you for joining us today. And if you want to go ahead and provide us with your overview of what you've been up to as far as helping to bring this program to Rhode Islanders.
Alrighty, so as Angie said, starting in June of this year, we began partnering with Rhode Island Housing to assist folks with their applications. And it's been interesting, and it's been I think as we've been going along, it's been getting easier and easier to do. We've had great back and forth with Rhode Island Housing. They're very responsive when we have a question, if someone calls. And it's been interesting because we've dealt with all sorts of different populations, tenants, of course, but also landlords who have called, and employers who have called, who are looking to make sure that their employees maintain their housing and having access to that, and helping them for some folks who either have language difficulties or language barriers, I should say, or have technological barriers. One of the nice things about being a CAP agency and helping people, as Angie said, was that we can also assist them with other things. So we recently had a tenant she was actually without a home at this time. She had lost her housing because she had gotten COVID and could not work. And so she was finally able to go back to work. And one of the things that we helped her, in addition to the Rent Relief Rhode Island application assistance, was with our clothing closet. We have a career closet here that was able to give her clothes so she could go back to work. So that was very nice, that we could assist her in that way to try and help her get back on her feet. And so we've had a lot of different situations. One thing that I think might be preventing people is some people have a great relationship with their landlords. They're like family, and the landlords are more than willing to get on board to assist. They'll come in, they'll do the application even before the tenant will do it. But some people are very nervous about, addressing it with their landlord, and we want to really encourage those folks. It is hard to do, and most folks are just getting by the best they can. And so we're here to help them in any way we can. And as Angie kind of said before, there are some barriers for especially what we're seeing is a lot of older people that did not lose jobs, did not have any significant output of expenses. And so that is one population I don't know if anyone's ever, kind of going to look at in a different light, because like the question Frank said, how many people out there need this, but we don't know that they need that, and if we have other statistics that can help with maybe some other funds or something, so.
Great. Thank you so much, Cindy. I mean, I think one of the things, it's just so important, because I think the blanks on a form where you're trying to apply for essentially federal assistance can be seem so narrow. And I think that really having folks like yourself and your staff really be able to understand holistically what's happening in people's lives and be able to understand how, wait, this really is a COVID-related hardship. And yes, you do actually apply for these funds or qualify for these funds. I think that's such an important takeaway. And from the experience that you've had working with clients, you know, and I know that I've heard this from constituents as well, you know, people are always hesitant to ask for help. And I think that people need to be confident knowing that there are people out there who want to help, who will help them navigate this process in the system, the eligibility, you know, making sure that the criteria are hit and the documents are provided doesn't have to be an insurmountable process, right? There's help for that. There's assistance for that. And I think the point too, where you provide wraparound services as well, there's other programs that are offered that, you know, they might be eligible, but not realize it until they come in and talk to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Frank, did you have anything?
No, I think I'm good at this point.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Cindy. And we're going to bring back all of our panelists at the end to do a broader Q&A. And for now, we are going to move on to our final panelist, last and certainly not least, Jennifer Wood, who is the Executive Director of the Rhode Island Center for Justice. Jennifer has over 30 years of public interest experience in civil legal aid organizations, civil rights firms, state government, and legislative roles. Prior to joining the Center for Justice, she was the Deputy Secretary General Counsel at the Rhode Island Executive Office of Health and Human Services and the General Counsel Chief of Staff in the Office of the Lieutenant Governor. She's also spent 9 years as the Chief of Staff and Chief Legal Counsel at the Rhode Island Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. She started her career as a fellow at Rhode Island Legal Services before transitioning to private practice. Jen is a graduate of Brown University and Northeastern University School of Law. And I'm going to add to her bio and say she's also a mentor of mine and somebody that I look up to in my private practice as a lawyer. Being like Jen Wood is something that I strive to be. So Jen, I'm very happy to have you join us. And, you know, really with the expiration of the federal moratorium, the work that you do at the Rhode Island Center for Justice, representing tenants in court and making sure that they have fair representation in eviction proceedings, among the many other things on your organizational caseload. But really wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of give us an update on where you see the eviction issue going in Rhode Island, the current state of play, and anything else you think that tenants and landlords need to know as it relates to any rent relief or eviction related issues. So welcome, Jen.
Thanks. I'm kind of blushing after that intro and also feel like I should be tired given what you just recited, but it's all good. So we really are facing the next layer of the eviction crisis in Rhode Island. And I always emphasize that this crisis predates the pandemic. And I just want to say that, although of course, we're here today to talk about how this is being addressed by a program that specifically is responsive to the pandemic. And like East Bay CAP, like other community responders and agencies across Rhode Island, the Centers for Justice and our colleagues at Rhode Island Legal Services are assisting Rhode Islanders in applying for rent relief. I want to emphasize that. We specifically are targeting tenants who may have already been served with an eviction or believe that that may be imminent. Their landlord has told them that they need to move out. They may have had some other overtures taken by the landlord for a self-help eviction, so-called, where they may have been locked out of their home. When those issues are occurring, we get involved. We are here to help tenants in their court case. And I really want to emphasize that part of what the state is doing is trying to help people get representation in evictions and also get the rent paid. Because in every eviction, whatever the cause of the eviction, one of the core legal issues and defenses is getting the rent paid. And the most powerful tool for that in Rhode Island at the present time, and for really quite a bit of time going forward, if we all understand that we're in this for the long haul, this pandemic is not abating in the ways that everyone hoped it would, is through Rent Relief RI. This is a solution for landlords, and it's a solution for tenants. And it's really the only solution available to really resolve the underlying issue, which is that we've had a horrible pandemic. At the peak moment, 20% unemployment in Rhode Island. I mean, it just cut through our economy in horrific ways. All of the people who had to stay home because their kids were in quarantine from school and distance learning, it's just had really an unaccountable impact economically in our state. So when you look at this program, this is the solution for stabilizing people in their homes. It's the only tool we have to get the rent paid. And so I really want to emphasize how important we feel that is. We have folks that work in our office who are representing people in evictions, who will drive to our clients' homes, pick up the documentation that is needed, upload it into the application in order to facilitate their rent relief application. That's how important it is. If you're a lawyer representing someone in an eviction, for getting through the rent relief application process with the client is a huge part of our job right now. And to respond to your question, Frank, you had said, well, how big is the need out there? How many people are being helped? I think we can try and ground that in some of the information that's on the Rent Relief RI dashboard. So we see that there have been roughly 9,600 accounts created. So just under 10,000 people in Rhode Island have applied for this help. Households, I should say, not people. But when you look at the number of denials, those denials that have been made among the applications that have already been completed for being actually not eligible, it's 58 people. So, there's just under 10,000 applications. Not all of those have been acted on, although a significant proportion have been. And many, many Rhode Islanders are eligible for this assistance. I cannot emphasize that enough. One of the things that we're really encouraging, and then to the scope of the problem, Frank, based on some national research, which is all based on modeling, so it's not precise, but in a normal period before the pandemic, there were roughly 8,000 evictions a year in Rhode Island. Based on looking at unemployment statistics and housing insecurity census data, it's estimated that there would be at least 15,000 in 2021 as the moratorium lifts and more evictions are filed. So nearly double the pre-pandemic level. Now, there are already 10,000 applications for help through rent relief. That's very encouraging. That means that we are reaching, and folks have reached back, and a significant proportion of those at risk are reaching out to the program, have filed an application, and will ultimately work their way through the process. So that's really important, and it shows that the program is operating in a way that I would describe as at scale, in terms of 10,000 people reaching out and holding that against 15,000 or more who are expected to possibly be facing an eviction or housing insecurity during this year. Of those who have applied, I'm noting on the dashboard that only about 1,500 of them have actually been served with a formal eviction. So about over 8,000 people who have not actually been served with court papers have applied for this help. I find that tremendously reassuring and encouraging, because one of the things we're trying to get everyone to understand is don't wait, don't be paralyzed, ask for the help. And there are also lots of folks who may have applied in June or July and gotten frustrated or felt they couldn't get through the program or complete their application. You also see those statistics on the dashboard on the Rent Relief website, because there's over 1,000 people who have kind of not pursued and persisted in their application. Whenever we talk to someone, if they've got an eviction filed, they're calling us because their landlord is saying, I'm going to file an eviction. Our first question is, did you apply to rent relief? The second question is, if you did and it's not been completed, what can we do to help you complete it? And if you think that your application has been closed or denied or that it's over, It's never over. We want to help people go back, reapply, get back in line, do whatever they need to do to access these life-saving funds. I mean, these funds can stabilize someone, a family in their home during an ongoing global pandemic with the Delta variant, with school starting up, with people needing to be back at work. So I can't emphasize the importance of persisting, calling back, reaching back out, getting help from a CAP agency or another community assister. So let me touch on that for a moment, because it is true that applying for things online is challenging. I'm in a 4-generation family. So my mom is 99 years old. I assist her with a lot of this stuff that people do online, like banking and Social Security and taxes, etc. It is not realistic for me to expect that my 99-year-old mother, although she's quite savvy and capable, is going to go online and apply for one of these programs. She needs assistance. A lot of people don't have the technology equipment, they don't have an internet signal that's sufficiently robust, whatever it may be. That's why the community assisters were put in place. So I keep trying to encourage people not to go it alone. I mean, sure, if you're on your phone every minute and you're checking Twitter and you're doing your TikToks, you can probably go to this website and apply and you're all set. Although you may need to get someone to help you figure out what your circumstances are vis-a-vis the eligibility criteria for the program. What economic hardships have you suffered during the pandemic? How would you best articulate that? So even for someone who's super tech savvy, there are some issues that they can get help with to navigate this application process. And for those who struggle with the technology access, please get the help. It is not a reason to abandon an application or simply feel like, well, I'm going to be frozen out of this. A number of the community agencies who are helping have language access for languages that are used in Rhode Island. So I really, the most important thing I can share today is that legal help is available if you've been served with an eviction or fear that that may be about to happen, and that application help is available. And there's nothing to be embarrassed about or feel diminished if you need that help. These application processes are complex. Government programs are by their nature complex. That should not be a deterrent to people persevering and applying. What we also see now with the US Supreme Court invalidating the remainder of the CDC's moratorium, which was supposed to extend through the beginning of October, we've certainly emphasized that in many states, we just saw the news this morning that New York State is extending a state-level moratorium by action taken in combination by the governor and the General Assembly. And we really hope that in Rhode Island, the purpose of a moratorium, the purpose of the CDC moratorium in this phase of the pandemic that unfortunately was lifted by the US Supreme Court, is to create time and space for people, landlords and tenants, to apply for and receive rent relief. Because if tenants are being moved out of their apartment or their home before the rent relief application gets decided, it throws the whole process into a mess. We need people to be stabilized while their rent relief application is being processed. And so that forms the basis for a really important policy decision for our governor, for the Rhode Island General Assembly, to give that time that would have been available if the CDC's protection had remained in place, so that the rent relief program can do its job and get millions of dollars in the hands of landlords and tenants. We're already up to nearly 20 million. That needs to keep climbing, because you saw there are over 10,000 people who need the help. Less than half of them have already been through the process. So that tells us we need that time to get the money into landlords' hands so that tenants can be stabilized. And the eviction will follow a tenant around for years. It's critically important that we provide Rhode Islanders, landlords and tenants, with the time for this program to do what it was designed to do. We're also asking the courts to hold off on cases where there is a rent relief application on file. That's just common sense. If the tenant has already applied for the help, the landlord has filed an eviction to get paid, then both parties are best served by letting the process run its course and letting the rent relief application get decided. So those are the policy dimensions to what has changed with the change at the national level with the CDC moratorium being lifted. We need local efforts, both through elected officials and through the courts, to create that space so that these rent relief applications can be resolved. There are thousands of them pending. We don't want to see all those folks displaced from their homes, nor do we want to see those landlords deprived of being made whole with 100% of the rent that they are owed and need in order to continue to also maintain their business, which is renting a property.
Thank you, Jen. And as you know, I am the sponsor of the eviction moratorium legislation in the Senate, and I was disappointed that we couldn't get that across the finish line this year. I'm continuing to advocate for that. And I think, you know, your point about the number of people as well to not wait to apply. You don't have to have an eviction pending. I think that's such an important point because having an eviction filed against you stays in the court record, and that will affect future housing applications. And so, and anyone who needs some assistance with their rent, don't hesitate, go and apply today. Don't wait for an eviction filing to be made, because that is very disruptive and will haunt you for a long time. There's a lot that you said. I also wanted to just highlight too that we've talked a lot about the rent relief and focusing on that aspect. Folks can apply to this program for utility relief as well. So even if you're not behind on your rent, but you are behind on your utilities, you can apply to this program for that purpose as well. And that includes the whole range of utilities: gas, electricity, water, sewer. Although most tenants don't pay the water or sewer bill, but you know, the wide range of utilities can be paid through this fund as well.
Thanks for adding that. I get so passionate about begging people to apply for the rental assistance that sometimes I forget to mention that it can be equally important to get the utility assistance. And National Grid and the Department of Human Services in Rhode Island and Rent Relief RI have worked together to identify eligible households who have a utility arrearage pending, so that those utility arrearages can be paid. Because actually, if the power and heat gets turned off in someone's home, that can be a primary driver of eviction and homelessness. And so we really want to make sure that people are getting those utility arrearages paid so that they can also remain safe in their homes. Particularly as we enter the school year, we don't know whether there will be needs for distance learning, but certainly there's always a need for school children to have a safe, healthy, heated environment in which to learn, from which they learn and attend school.
Absolutely. Frank, did you have anything? And then I think we should bring the rest of the panelists back on and see if we have any audience questions.
Yeah, I do have a few questions. When I'm looking at that 15,000 figure that you used relative to people who might face eviction, wouldn't our number be a lot higher than that for those who may not face eviction, but you would add the utilities or the potential where they're juggling things like paying for medicine and food, with paying for rent and utilities?
Frank, I'm using the most conservative estimate, and that estimate is only for those who would actually have an eviction filed. There have been estimates as high as 140,000 Rhode Islanders who have been directly impacted by COVID and during COVID, and who are experiencing utility arrearages or other disruption in their lives. The 15,000 is basically looking at the census data of those who reply that they are facing housing insecurity imminently, and doing a cross analysis to those who in Rhode Island who have been unemployed within the last 12 months to really determine who are the most likely households that might actually experience an eviction proceeding. So that's an extremely conservative estimate. I was just trying to give you some framework within which to understand that not everyone in Rhode Island who may actually be facing an eviction has applied for rent relief yet. So that's my pitch to say, I know that there are many more households out there who can benefit from this program and should be applying.
Sure. And a couple of other quick questions. When we take a look at those households that are applying, do we have a profile generally of how many are elderly households, how many are families? Do we have that kind of a picture?
It's a great question, Frank, and all of us who are doing this work scrambling to collect those data, and we do try and have an understanding of the demographic data of who our clients are. I will tell you, I'm not going to give you percentages because actually we're running so fast defending evictions and helping people with rent relief applications that I haven't had time to do the data reporting to pull that all together. I see that I think Christine will be able to answer that in terms of those who have already participated in the rent relief program. But the majority of our clients are households with children. Many of those may be multi-generational households that also include an elder. So national research shows, and it is borne out by our experience in our practice, that the majority of households that do face an eviction are households with children present in the home.
And Dawn, I have just a quick question for you in terms of your legislation, and obviously it will take time to go through. Mm-hmm. Does the governor have the ability to issue an executive order that would extend the moratorium?
You know, that's a good question. I am not sure actually about the scope of his authority on that. I would imagine that public health and safety is within his purview. I think that I will say that for their part, the courts have been issuing different orders as far as like the management of the courts and how they are processing evictions to try to make sure that we don't have a floodgate of evictions. So, but yeah, to your point, obviously the General Assembly, we recessed, and so we are not in session right now. So the passage of legislation at this moment becomes infinitely more challenging than were we still in session. So.
And I think I'm good for the moment, Dawn.
That's great. I think let's bring up the rest of the panelists, and then I'm not sure if we have any other audience questions, but I do know that Christine was able to, I think, weigh in on the demographics question about who's been applying.
Sure. What we know is that 65 to 70% of them are female-headed households, and we know that 85% of the applicants are at 50% of area median income or below. Over 60% of the total applicants are under 30% of AMI or below. So it's really folks who struggle on a day-to-day basis to pay their rent, regardless of COVID, right? These are folks who struggle and who need assistance. So.
And I think, that makes sense to me because as, the unfortunate reality is that in the pandemic, the folks who were least able to afford losing their jobs were often the first to lose their jobs. So I know in the hospitality industry in particular, many low-wage jobs were the first on the unemployment line, unfortunately. So to me, that demographic, unfortunately, makes sense with my understanding of economically what's been happening in the pandemic. Okay, it looks like, I don't know, Frank, do you have any other questions?
I'm trying to look and see here. Oh, well, I guess here's an overriding question that I have in terms of what's happened with the whole housing market and renters. We have a lot of landlords now who have seen the value of their homes, these smaller units, maybe 3-4 apartment units that have skyrocketed in value, and are deciding instead to sell those units for perhaps other purposes, and putting people who are in those particular apartments in jeopardy in one way or another. How does all that factor in, and what advice would you give to someone who finds himself in that situation?
I think I probably have to answer that question. We are seeing tremendous compression in an already compressed housing market. We already had nation leading or nation trailing, depending on how you want to view it. We're one of the worst places to try and find an affordable apartment in the country because we already had a 2% vacancy rate before the pandemic. So our clients could barely find apartments before the pandemic. And now there is, as everyone knows, it's documented nationally and it's happening in Rhode Island, a surge in prices for housing. So a lot of people who own properties are looking at profit taking right now because they're selling their properties to new owners. That's tremendously disruptive and does further complicate the dynamics of people applying for rent relief and people facing evictions. So that's a very important additional variable. It, to me, further emphasized the need for us to stabilize the situation by holding people in place while the rent relief applications go through. Because what I can tell you, Frank, is that there's no place for people to move to. That's the impact of what's happening in the housing market. We're working with clients every day who are willing to move, who could get first month and security from rent relief, who could get help for the move, but they have nowhere to move to.
Ryan, I thought you had a question.
Yes, just a quick question. Many people on social media are sharing about how their friends, family, maybe even their enemies are having issues with some of these things. What can folks do to, besides sharing the information that we all heard and learned about today, and all the great resources in this video will be available to watch afterwards? What can people do to support each of your organizations or to help that aren't feeling these problems or don't need these services? What can they do?
Well, I think I know sharing on social media is one way to do it, but what we find is that trusted people in your life are the best way, right? So if you're talking to folks, to friends, to family, and understand that they may be struggling, speaking to them about this program gives it, that added layer of credibility because someone you trust has mentioned it to you. So I think social media is great. We do a lot of it and trying to get the word out, but talk to your friends and your neighbors and your family and your coworkers and let them know it's here. It's one of the big ways that we get the word out about programs like this.
And I want to double down on that answer and say Rhode Island is a very small state and the rumor mill is particularly powerful. And so if you're talking to a friend, a neighbor, a cousin, a nephew, and they say, oh, I'm really struggling. I'm behind on my rent several months, but I've heard that rent relief thing is kind of hard to deal with. And, a lot of people get turned away or it's online and I don't want to do it. Please, please correct that impression. Say, no, look, I was listening to this program online the other day and the people who run the program were there. People who help with the program were there. And they said that you can get help. You can reach out. So don't believe everything you hear, don't be discouraged from applying. Look, the worst thing that happens, we have clients who've received $17,000 in back rent, $13,000 in back rent, $22,000 in back rent. The worst thing that happens is you apply and for some reason you're not eligible. People buy lottery tickets every day with less provocation. So, reach out and find out if you're eligible. It can be life-changing.
The one thing I'd like to add to that is know the community organization in your area. Sometimes telling them an agency, giving them a name. So right now you have my name, you have Cindy's name. People are more comfortable if they know who to expect on the other side or where to go. So just saying rent relief could be broad, but if you tell them, go to your CAP, you live in East Providence, that's at Bullock's Point, I know Cindy, I know Angie. So the more information you have to make the person feel comfortable to approach or call is sometimes really helpful.
Excellent, thank you. And
go ahead,
Senator.
Sorry, I actually want to weigh in on that too. And I think one of the things that's really important is that all of the panelists on the call today, as well as many other organizations that are partner organizations with this program, have tried really hard to do everything possible to streamline the application process, to support people applying. We want to help. We want to make sure that this money gets in the hands of those who need it. And so reaching out to us and letting us know if you're hearing about issues where somebody applied, don't spend the time spreading that on the rumor mill. Reach out to my office. I was joking with Christine that I call Rhode Island Housing like every other day. My office phone number is 276-5589. If you have any issues, you feel like, maybe the eligibility didn't work for you, some sort of application process, my office will help. And we will take that feedback because, one of the questions was asked, why aren't people applying? If we don't know where people are getting hung up in the process, we can't fix it. And we want to fix it because we want the money to get into the hands of those who need it. So reach out to us and let us know if there's any issues. The last thing I'll say on that about how to help is that Rhode Island Housing printed out about 500 flyers. For me, I'm going to be sending out a team of volunteers to do canvassing door to door in Jamestown and Newport to let folks know about this program, about how to apply. If anybody wants to volunteer to do that door to door in their neighborhood, definitely reach out to me and I'll get you connected so that we can do that boots on the ground outreach to our friends, families, and neighbors who need it.
Excellent. And I know we are beyond time, but Rachel actually just brought up a great question. And for anybody who could stick around for 1 minute, with unemployment ending today, and with the bonus ending or rent increase from landlords won't be able to keep up going forward, how should they apply for rent relief for future rent payments? With unemployment ending, I don't know if anybody has a particular thought on that one, and we'll wrap it up with that question.
Right. So you just apply the same way. You go in, you answer all the same questions, what your income is, what your hardship has been. And then when you get to that part about housing instability or insecurity, there's a form in there. It asks you some questions and you just say, unemployment's coming to an end and I'm not going to be able to make my housing payment. Right. So it's the same way. It's just that when you get asked that question about housing insecurity, past due owed rent, and even if that's not past due, you fill out that form and answer those questions, and the application will be considered.
I want to thank all of our panelists today for your time, for your expertise, for everything that you're doing for Rhode Islanders and connecting people with this program, along with the myriad other activities that I know you all do in your respective roles. To me, this type of information session is just really invaluable, and especially now with online content can be shared time and time again. So I want to encourage everybody to go to rentreliefri.com, fill out an application if you need it, share it with your friends and family. With that, I'll turn it over to Frank if you have any closing remarks.
Oh, just simply that I thought this was a great session. I think a lot of great information came out. Could go on for hours for all of the issues that deal with this. And I congratulate all of you on the panel who are working so hard to try and connect Rhode Islanders so that they don't face additional hardship. And I want to urge everybody, if you know of people, it's one thing to take a look at our own situation, but if we look beyond that and other people who need to get connected, the best way for people to learn about the program is from friends and relatives who can help them get connected. And these are the people you can get in touch with.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it. And we will chat with you again soon. We will discuss it then. Frank Prosnitz, thanks for hosting today.
Well, thank you. This was great. We've done a whole lot on affordable housing and these kinds of things. These are just such critical and important issues. I just want to just share one quick anecdote to put it in real perspective. I'm aware of an individual who was a house painter, independent house painter, who over the course of the pandemic was limited, if not unable to do any work. He's a hardworking guy. He's got a family. He's got a disabled child. And because of all of these things, he was living in a tent and in need of this kind of help. I think he's gotten it. And that's why this is just so incredibly important for so many people.
And for those that haven't heard it in a while, I am on the board of Lucy's Hearth in Middletown, and encourage anybody who needs help to get in touch with them. But also firsthand experience living and being homeless and living in a tent myself as a child. So certainly anytime we can point this out and share this information and host important conversations like this, we will do so. So appreciate your time and appreciate all of our panelists' time, as well as Senator Euer for organizing all of this.
And
without her, we couldn't have put this all together.
A quick note from Senator Euer, who just posted in the chat here that people who are homeless can apply. I think that's important to know.
We just need to get them the information. Obviously, they're probably not sitting around watching on Facebook. If you know somebody who is struggling, it takes a community, it takes a village, and you got to pass this information on. Whether you have to print it, reach out to us. We'll get you the information. Ryan@whatsupnewp.com, and we will get the information to the people that need it. All right, Mr. Prosnitz.
Very good. Really good session. All
right. Until next time, on behalf of Frank Prosnitz and myself and all of us here at What's Up Newp, I want to thank Senator Euer as well as all of our panelists for joining us today. If you missed any portion of this, if you need more information, it's all available on whatsupnewp.com. Thanks for watching.